issues have been compounded by the pandemic. Look, face it, that for the isolation that has come with it for many people, being away from friends and family in the bubble, or even now, lives altered in so many ways. I think it just further accentuates, issues that we all have. And I think those aren't stories, you like to see. But again, even if they weren't reported, there's no question that there are issues that happen at teams. I mean, ideally, from a league standpoint, those issues are handled behind closed doors, and that guys are able to work out issues with their teams. In some cases, guys end up getting traded because that's what the team wants to do rather than that's what the player wants. In other cases, it's just bad chemistry on a team or change in circumstances, changes in GMs and coaches, and those things work their way out. I would say in the case of both James Harden and Kyrie, you have like extraordinarily talented people, complex people also, who again, in many ways like LeBron, it's not just about life on the court. They're multidimensional people. They feel strongly about lots of issues around their community. And again, at the end of the day, you just want to see them be able to focus and have great seasons. And it seems like in this case, both situations have settled down. I think Kyrie, recognizes at the end of the day that talking to the media is part of his responsibility as a player. And it's not really just about the media, with all due respect. You all are a proxy, for reaching our fans. And it's part of how our fans can engage with our players in our game to understand sort of what players are thinking about and what they're doing. And I think James, I saw the media he did last week. He said he's focused on his game and being in Houston right now. And look, he's got some great players around him, and let's see what happens once the season starts. Ultimately, that's what puts a smile on my face. That's what's so exciting, to be back to NBA basketball.
Absolutely, getting back to NBA basketball, but I'd be remiss in neglecting to bring up Kawhi Leonard as well, because you guys are investigating, the league is investigating allegations made against the Los Angeles Clippers and consultant Jerry West about the recruitment of Kawhi Leonard. What can you tell us about that, and how far along you are in that investigation? What can you speak on in regards to that?
All I can say there is everyone is entitled to the presumption of innocence. Obviously, someone that is not known to me or to the league office has made an allegation against the team, and so we'll look into it. It's our obligation on behalf of all 30 teams that if something comes to our attention, we look into it and we see if there's anything there. Again, I have no reason to believe, based on inappropriate that took place, but that's why we follow up on whatever leads come to the league office. So that's all I can say right now.
Commissioner Adam Silver, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for making sure that we have another season to look forward to tomorrow night, opening night soon. Thank you so much for being on the show. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen A. Thanks for having me.
All right, the commissioner is giving us a gift this holiday season, 5 games on Christmas Day. So be sure to watch Get Up and First Take Christmas morning as we count down to tip-off. All right. Excellent job, Stephen A. Thank you so much. Max, I want to come to you on this. I have the utmost respect for Commissioner Adam Silver. He came across as transparent and authentic and empathetic. Obviously, we know this is going to be a fluid situation, but he's also very confident, and they have many plans in place. I found it interesting that he said his players aren't going to jump the line in terms of the vaccine. They'll follow the normal protocol, and they're not considered high priority, high demand, being healthy and of a younger age. What really stood out to you from what the commissioner had to say with Stephen A?
That was number one. Chronologically, the fact that they wouldn't jump the line, he's responsible. And then I took notes on the interview, Stephen A., that he doesn't coerce. He's not coercive with the players. He admits that without stipulations to the CBA, for example, he can't force anyone to have a vaccination in order to play, even if they were widely available. But he seeks to persuade. Both the responsibility and the seeking to persuade rather than coerce are traits of a real leader. He admits what he doesn't know about how the season without a bubble is going to work. And that attitude also shows humility and maturity, which is needed to tackle that kind of a challenge. That's leadership. He also said, by the way, the Supermax extension is working. You hear that one? The way it was intended. The league wants stars to stay put. put and wants all those markets to be competitive. What's interesting about Silver is this all fits the profile, and about the way he seems to see the players as partners, as opposed to the NFL, for example, which seems to take a more kind of authoritative position versus the players, and a more antagonistic one, and vice versa with the players to the NFL. So although his kind of style of leadership, I think, was on display there, and it's promising for the NBA.
Can I say something to y'all that both you, Max, and Molly, that I think is going to be relatively controversial, but I don't give a damn because it's how I passionately feel. I am not one, and could y'all put me on the 3 screen because I want to see Molly when I'm saying this as well. I'm not, first responders, people who have obviously questionable health situations and are in desperate need of it. I'm not talking about them. Of course, they come first. But this notion, I can't stand, and we didn't have much time, so we were limited in the time that we were going to have. So I didn't go too deep into it. But I get tired of hearing leagues say, we're not going to jump the line, because I think people are looking at it wrong. And this is the controversial part, it could be, that I want to say to the public. When I think about basketball and I think about football, I'm not thinking about the players. I'm thinking about the thousands and thousands and thousands of people they employ. And so when I think about, if you have access, if you have the means because you generate revenue, and as a result, you can get to the head of a line. And I'm not talking about ahead of those who are ill. I'm not talking about those who are in need. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying them first. First responders, first. Get all of them. Hospital workers, health workers, first. But outside of that, once you get down to it, I inherently have a problem with this notion. We're jumping to the front of the line because I think people are thinking about the players and the performers. I think we're forgetting about the thousands upon the thousands upon the thousands of people that are employed and are looking to work and don't want to end up unemployed and don't want to end up on a food line. They don't want to end up in those conditions. And I think and not only that, they're the ones roaming in the streets every day, hustling and bustling, working their 9 to 5 or beyond to get themselves in position to provide for their families and to be healthy, and risking their health in order to do it. So what I'm saying is, if you're a league, a multi-billion-dollar establishment that ultimately generates that amount of money for the modern day workers out there, and you feed the economy and you're able to feed folks, salaries and things of that nature. If you can get them vaccinated, I don't see a problem with it. That's my issue when I hear leagues talking about, we don't want to jump to the front of the line, because I think rightfully so, they're very, very concerned about the PR backlash they'll receive if indeed they were getting to the front of the line. But I think people who are ready to excoriate them, it's because they're thinking about multi-million-dollar athletes and those associated with them. And they're stopping there, and they're not thinking about the hundreds of thousands of people who are employed. It matters.
Well, I think that's an interesting point to bring up, and it's a legitimate point to bring up. And I would say, especially when the government's only sending out checks, this $600 that's supposed to get everyone through the winter. People who are out of work, they're supposed to live on $600 through the winter,
yes,
which is absurd. But I would also say that leadership at the very top, or a lack thereof, such as only $600 checks to people who need the checks, that does create a kind of a rat race environment, right? Where it's every man, woman, and child for themselves. And if you can get your hands on some vaccines, then okay, that's more important, because that'll keep the economy going, and that's so important. Yes, that environment is created with a lack of leadership at the top. I agree with that. Stephen A., I would also say that I might even sign on to that idea were it not for this factor. You keep bringing up people with pre-existing conditions. You know what the number one pre-existing condition that's most by far positively correlated with death by COVID? Age. That's the pre-existing condition. The elderly really need the vaccination, and there are millions and millions and millions of them. And so I like to see the way kind of the national character, right?
Well,
how a country treats their elderly. I think that's important. And so
So do
if
I.
not for that factor, I might even sign on to what you're saying and say, guys, we do live in a world where this is an economic engine, et cetera. And if there are lots of vaccinations, maybe they will jump the line. I don't think they can.
But Max, that's what I'm saying. Take care of them first. I'm not implying by any means to jump ahead of those. I'm saying take care of them. That's who I'm talking about. When I say those who are in need first, take care of them. But don't be worried about the PR backlash. Do what you can to facilitate. Listen, JT the Brick, host a radio show on Sirius XM. I've known him for years. That's my
JT,
guy.
I go way back
I love
with
him. He does a
JT,
phenomenal job. JT and I go way back. JT came up with an idea because the NFL was entertaining what they're going to do for the Super Bowl. JT the Brick came up with a phenomenal idea. He said, you want to pack the stadium for the Super Bowl? Make sure you fill them with first responders and all of those folks who have sacrificed and paid the dues. Make sure they're vaccinated and fill the stadium with them. I think that's a phenomenal idea. In other words, the NFL has the means. The NFL has the means to pull it off. The NBA and other professional sports leagues have the means to facilitate those who are in dire need of a vaccine being taken care of. I'm just saying, once that's done, don't worry about the PR backlash because you might have the means to jump ahead of some people if indeed the goal is to make sure those thousands upon thousands of people remain employed. Let's make sure we remember that. Get them vaccinated. Get them taken care of.
I totally agree about.
Let me get in here really quickly, Max, because I don't think what you're actually saying, Stephen A., is controversial, because I think at the end of the day, we're talking about the game of life, game of basketball. We all respect the fact that the first responders need to be taken care of. I have a cousin who works in the ER in Massachusetts. He had just said to me he received his first vaccine. Obviously, there's 2 doses. He has to wait another 3 weeks. That's very promising. Just someone in my inner circle. But then at the same time, if we're talking about the pre-existing